Let's look at players who suck. Let's look at players who are the GOATs. Well, we're looking at more fantasy trends. Who's up, who's down, and who is Michael Bolton?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and join me in the summer for a 10-part podcast series breaking down the greatest song of all time, All the Things She Said by Tattoo. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We're free. We're available on all platforms. In fact, we're free to double bang on all platforms as well. Listen to the audio, watch the video, thumb, bell, subscribe, comment. Get your fingers really working hard to support the channel. I support the channel. You don't have to. You can just watch it and do those things. All right, let's do what we need to do. It's not a buy low, sell high show because your trade deadlines are done. I know that. But we're talking about guys who are playing above their head, guys who are struggling. So when you're in the fantasy playoffs and you go, man, this guy's terrible, you can look at it and go, yeah, he's probably going to improve. Or, man, this guy really carried. What's in store for me now? And the answer is probably pain, because we've probably got a 90. I don't know the exact number. I'm gonna try something interesting with these buy low, sell high shows all through the year in the off season. Just a recap sort of thing. I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do with it, but it'll be something. We've had a pretty high success rate in terms of determining who's up and how they stay and where it goes and all that sort of stuff. So enough. Or should I do one of my biggest pet peeves of all time when people say, without further ado? That annoys me. It's ado. A-D-O. Ado. Not adieu, which is what, German? I think I've said this. I've ranted about this before, haven't I? For goodbye. And I said it's not German, it's French. Adieu. I have ranted about this before because someone corrected me on it. There you go. Let's look at what we did 2 weeks ago on this show. How do we go? Kevin Durant was 63rd. We said that he was going to improve. He has. He's not really where he needs to be, but he's 37th. It's been a really, again, not disappointing, but you would hope for more from Kevin Durant at this point of the year. He just sort of taken a back seat. But it's been improved. Steph was 53rd. He improved marginally to 47th. He was injured in that period, but that's a per-game number. It's not where it needs to be. Paul George, one of the biggest improvements you'll see, he was 115th. And he just said, all right, let's go. 8th since then. Now, obviously, that's swung the pendulum too far, and he's got to pull back from there. But that's fantastic. If you were looking and relying on Paul George to make the fantasy playoffs, well, he delivered. This is one of the worst ones we've ever had. Franz Wagner was 102nd, and he has gone backwards. He's 147th since then. It's one of the worst results I've had. And Big Nick Vucevic was 75th. And honestly, when I looked at this, I'm like, all right, we're going to look at Vuce. Yeah, it's going to be a huge W. I thought he'd been much better. No, 57th. It's still okay, but it's not. I thought he was going to be, he's running at top 20, top 25 numbers the last 2 weeks. No, 57th, which is a little surprising to me. On the other side of things, Derek White was 12th. Even though he had that triple-double yesterday, he's 32nd since then. It's been an up and down season from White, who has exceeded all of my expectations, which is unbelievable to say given where I sit on Derek White, but he has exceeded my expectations in a huge way. Jim Butler, March legend, he was 13th. Per game since then, 113th. And this is, again, it's always worth remembering how you digest media. When everyone jumps on and Jimmy has 3 good games, yep, he doesn't care about basketball, but in March, he's the greatest player in the world. Well, is he? The answer is no, he's not, because even though he's injured at the moment, the games before that, he struggled. There is a overwhelming narrative that gets chucked out with players. This is not to be negative towards Jimmy necessarily, but you just have to be really cautious of the way you absorb information or take it in, because the 113th best player is not Jim VP. Right? He's not. And historically, he hasn't been either. But that narrative got pushed around that, just wait until Jimmy tries. It's all going to come together. Maybe not. Maga Porter Jr. was 15th. He is 72nd since then. He has been a huge roller coaster all season. Josh the Hitman Hart was 34th, and part of the reason I had him on here was I thought he was going to decrease some of the minutes, but also some of the production. And I thought, OG would return and we'd see a drop off. And it did. OG did come back and then he's gone again. But Hart did drop some of the per minute stuff and the shooting's just been horrific. 34th he was, and he's 59th since then. So that's a W again. And then Keegan Murray. What a roller coaster this bloke's been. 41st. He was on the Sell High show 2 weeks ago. 185th since then, which is honestly, that's not a 12-team league player. You still do hold him. But man, he has, I don't know what the right term is for what Keegan's done this season. Been frustrating. We'll put it that way. Frustrating is how we describe it. So let's look at guys who are underperforming at the moment. And we're going to go right to the tippy top of the list because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 34th over the last 2 weeks. One of the things I talked about in the offseason about Shai is I know he definitely had to go in the top 5, top 4 draft picks, top 3, whatever we want to talk about, right? He had to. We knew this. But I was always had some sort of a concern's not the right word, but it was more like if this thing does not happen, where is Shai? Because last season he was able to take his free throws up 9 percentage points and take his volume up almost 4 free throws a game. And I said, well, if that comes back a little bit, and if the free throws go back to where he was at 81%, well, he's not going to be that top 3 guy. And yeah, he's 34th in -1. He's averaging 48 fantasy points, 29.7 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. He's excellent. 1.7 triples, but look at this. 1 steal and 0.8 blocks, shooting 52, 31, and 81 from the line. So he's been running at 88 for the season, so that's a little bit down from last year. Also, the new way the NBA is emphasizing the rules and the fouls has impacted him. He's down to 8.1 free throws over the last month, 8.7 over the last 6 games. He was down from 10.9 last season. But after a red-hot start again from the line, it's just gone down and down and down each month. Over the last 42 games, he's at 85% from the line. Not to say that he's bad at all, because he's not. But he was holding that number 1 ranking spot all season. He's not there now. He's 3rd. And if he goes back to that 81 and the steals, which were hovering at like 2.4 all season, again, we have all of this in our head. Not to say that Shai hasn't been great, but we look at what Shai did to start the year and go, well, look, he was dominating. He's at 1.6 steals over the last 42 games. Not the 2.4 that I went in and was like, Shai's averaging 2.5 steals. He's killing everyone. No, 1.6 steals over the last 42 games, down to 1 steal a game over the last 6. Free throws down to a normal level, and he's sitting in that, like he's 34th. Like that's not great. That's basically because free throws are down, steals are cut in half from his season number. And it's worth thinking about when we think about Shai and his fantasy value overall. He's going to be better than this. Like I don't think he's an 81% shooter or a 1 steal per game guy, but calibrate that versus what he did the first 20 games of the season. And it's not there. That level's not there at the moment. And it hasn't been for a while, honestly. Let's go to Washington. I don't know what's going to happen with this bloke at his back, Tyus Jones, how much they're going to play him over these final 4 weeks. But it has also been a roller coaster for him. He was like seemingly unrosterable to begin the year. Had a hot streak where he was running at like top 30. Now, 184th over the last 2 weeks. Averaging just 25 fantasy points, which is 131st. 8.6 points with 2.5 rebounds and 8.6 assists. Same points and same assists. He's shooting 39 from the field, 30 from 3. Hasn't missed a free throw, but he never takes them, so it doesn't really matter that much. So, what are we looking at with Tyus here? Well, let me tell you actually how many free throws he's taken. I think he's taken 2 over the last 5 games. 2. Doesn't matter if you hit 100 of them if you go 2. So what's going on? Well, not hitting 2s. 47.6% from 2. He's at 54 for the season. He's never been a 50% 2-point shooter in his career. So again, some of the early stuff that was elevating him up the rankings was maybe not realistic because that has pulled all the way back down. How does that go? Does it come back up to at least 50? Can you get 3 percentage point increase on that? Maybe. And then he's just not getting steals. And that is one of the biggest individual takeaways. If you want to be a basic fantasy player, you can look at the rank that Yahoo gives you. That is the most basic thing you can do. It's incorrect and it will mislead you, but that is the most basic thing you can do. The next step above that, if you just want to pay attention to valuations of players, you check 3-point percentage and you check steal rate because they influence the production of players and the ranking and the perceived value of players more than anything else. So when someone is dropped like Tyus has, you go, why is that? It was at 0.4 steals versus 1.1. He was at 1 last season, 0.9 the year before. Even that was in lower minutes. He's always been a relatively good steals guy. He's just had 2 steals in his last 5 games. So that stuff is going to come back up. So the problem with Jones is, like, does he play? What happens with this back injury? Is that hampering him? Well, these 5 games, it's 31 minutes, so he's still playing those minutes. I don't know where we sit with Jones exactly. Like, if he misses another game with a back problem, I don't know that he's good enough to hold on to, honestly, because the way he's playing, obviously, over the last 5 games, he's not, and now he's out. But I do think there is room for improvement here from the big fella, or the small fella, so to speak, Tyus Jones. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That is what brings home the winning trophy in fantasy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to US customers. All right, on to some more buy lows. Tyus is out of here. We're going to go to Charlotte for the first Hornets player I'm talking about in today's show, and that is Brandon Miller. I've alluded to this many times in the recap show, saying Miller has been mid, like he's been poor of late. He first appeared on my Sal High show just before, like, an hour after the Terry Rozier trade happened, because he was already done all the work, and then the Rozier trade happened. I go, all right, cool. I said, this is a great opportunity to try and sell high because someone is going to really buy into what's happening. And then he went on like a top 40 run and went, oh, God, I'm an idiot. But no, he's, I am an idiot, but he's fallen off. 157th in -1 ranks last 2 weeks, 30 fantasy points only. He's averaging 15.9 with 4.6 rebounds, under 3 assists, 2 threes, 1.1 steals, 0.7 blocks, shooting 41 from the field, 29 from 3, and 71 from the line. It's not that minutes are a problem for Brandon Miller because he's getting a lot of them. He is playing... Well, actually, you know what? He's not. He's playing only 31 a night. He was getting a ton, and they have pulled him way back. Way back. 31 a night he's playing. But it's the shooting, which was... Again, it's all... So much of perception is timing. And when Terry Rozier got traded, Brandon Miller... Someone could fact check me on this, but when those 2 weeks or 3 weeks after Rozier got traded, I think Miller shot like 56% from the field and 42% from 3 on elevated minutes and volume, which made it seem like, yeah, like we're rolling here, this guy's going to dominate. And it didn't add up to anything that he'd done prior, and it didn't add up to any of his college shooting numbers. Now, this doesn't either. This is way below that. That's why we're talking about him going to improve. But he's going to be a really interesting player for next season in terms of fantasy drafts, as how much we buy into a full breakout or a step forward or where he sits. Because I would say the last month has been relatively disappointing overall. Maybe I'm wrong on that. 29.3% from that. Now, just because I know someone's going to jump in. Me saying that Brandon Miller's been a little bit disappointing. How come you don't mention Scoot being disappointing? He has been disappointing. He's been way worse than Brandon Miller. He has. Yes, Brandon Miller has been solid, but for what he was doing, it's been disappointing. Yes, me saying that one person is better or worse than what they had been or what I thought they could be does not reflect on any other players. Scoot Henderson has been worse. Get that out of the way. He's also shooting 71 from the line. What the hell's going on there? 82% for the season from the free throw line. But over the last month, he's at 71% from the line. And he just doesn't take any free throws either. 1.6 attempts in 34 minutes over the last 13 games. That is something that does improve the longer you're in the NBA, but it needs to get better. But there's obviously signs for improvement here. He's not going to be a 29 three-point shooter, I don't think. He's not going to be a 41 guy overall. He's not going to be a 71 free throw player. That can all improve very easily. And I even think the minutes can jump back up. So I think improvement's coming. What about the fun guy? Kawhi Leonard. He was an interesting player this season. He started off really weirdly. Jim Harden arrived and he was completely lost. Kawhi. I took Kawhi in quite a number of leagues. I've still got him in 3 leagues, including the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl Points League, which I'm in the Battle Royale finale. I had him in Industry Pickup, where Mitch Casey beat me in the semis last week. So I drafted Kawhi in a lot of spots because I got him at gigantic discounts in like the 30s and 40s of drafts. And then he started off the season pretty mid. I went, oh, geez, this is not working, is it? And then he went crazy. Recently, it's been the opposite. Maybe this is why I lost in industry pickup and in Locked On Fantasy Basketball categories, semifinals. Because he's 46th over the last 2 weeks, 36th in points leagues. He's averaging 21.8 points with 5.2 rebounds and 3 assists, 1.3 triples only, and 0.7 steals. Well, there you go. There's the red flag. Because he's shooting 57 from the field. That's great. 34.8 from 3, 89 from the line. But what's going on here? Like, he's been dominating from 3, hitting 42% from 3. He's at 34.8 over the last 2 weeks. Yeah, he had the back spasm issue for sure in there, and that did drop his overall minutes down. But that's not really a big thing because he's still averaging 33 minutes a night over his last 6, because that doesn't really factor. The shots just aren't going in, and he's at 42% from 3 for the year. But if I even pull it back to the last month, the last 13 games, he's at 30% from deep. So, while we might not buy Kawhi as a 42% guy, I don't. I've got him projected around 40.5, 41, around that mark. 35 is going to improve. And there's one thing we know about Kawhi Leonard is the man gets steals. Well, apparently not at the moment. 0.7 over the last 2 weeks. He's at 1.6 for the year. He was at 1.4 last year. He was at 1.6 the year before that. So just a steady 1.5 type of steals player. Now he's cut it in half and you're not getting them. But they're very easily going to come back up. The 3-point numbers are going to come back up. The ranking is going to shoot back up. It's very obvious that this will happen. So if you got Kawhi, yeah, it was bad timing if you got knocked out last week. Shout out to me. But it will improve. I don't have much doubt about Kawhi Leonard being better. The next Charlotte Hornets player is snooker legend Miles Bridges. 122nd over the last 2 weeks. Good. 130th on Yahoo, averaging 38 fantasy points, which is still 46th. But without LaMelo Ball, both Bridges and Miller are struggling in a big way. And we could talk about, I know people love to crap on LaMelo. He's probably up there with Trae Young as the person that people hate the most. He's unserious, never going to win. He's actually terrible. We hear this constantly. I'd also just take a look at this Hornets team when LaMelo plays versus when he's out to say whether he impacts winning or not. Like, the man took this team to the play-in as a rookie and a second-year player. All right, so I reckon there's a little bit of unfair stuff around LaMelo. Yes, the ankle stuff is obviously clearly annoying. But these guys are just not good unless he is there. It's not that Miles Bridges isn't playing minutes, because, he's getting every one of them. 122nd is bad. He's averaging 20.7 points, which is pretty good. 8 rebounds, 4 assists, no problem. That's all well and good. He is doing that in 39 minutes a game. He's hitting 1.6 threes only, 0.9 steals only, 0.3 blocks only, shooting 43 from the field, 23 from 3, and 69 giggity from the line. Now, Miles Bridges got this reputation of being this great shooter, or good shooter. He's not, but he's got a reputation for it. He's at 35% from 3 for the season, down to 22 over the last 2 weeks. His 3-point numbers over his career, 35 this year, 33 in his breakout year, 40 the year before that. So realistically, he's just a mid 3-point shooter, but he's also just fallen way off. The free throws, I don't know what's going on here, because he was at 80 in his breakout year. He was 87 the year. So since he's got more usage and become a bigger factor, he's been a worse shooter. So he went from 87 in that 2020-2021 season, 87 from the line, and then the year after where he broke out, he went to 80%, and same as his 3-point shooting numbers. They went down. He went from 63 true shooting to 59. This season, he's at 55, which is horribly below average. So there's some efficiency concerns here, but I'm not going to buy into Miles Bridges being a 69 giggity% free throw shooter. That is going to improve. But again, if we want to look a little bit deeper, he's at 79 over the last 30 games. He's at 71 over the last 14 games. He just, at the moment, can't shoot. I do think that this is going to improve. It is going to get better. But they are some real red flaggy type things about shooting numbers that we've got to be really cautious about how we value him. And when he goes on a hot streak and it makes him look great, well, how long does that stick? But this is going to get better. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further? Do you ever wonder what adventure could be just around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. It's got class-exclusive Google built-in, being your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days where you've got to connect your phone to the system. Well, it's already built in. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are right there in the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder, with room for up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capabilities with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go and find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Whenever I read that ad and it says expansive cargo capacity, I always remember this like meme pun video or no picture that I saw on Instagram, and it was a guy at a car dealership pointing to an SUV, and the guy's going cargo space, like pointing to the trunk, or we call it the boot, so cargo space, and the guy working there is like, no, cargo road. Ew. All right, let's move into some sell highs, some guys who are playing above their head at the moment. Yes, let's do that. Zion, the biggest bird. I talked about this on one of my shows, and then I tweeted it out and said, how amazing is it that we're having this, you would never have believed this, that Zion Williamson's having a better fantasy season than Mikal Bridges, because he is. He's been ridiculous. And recently they are doing the two things that I have thought could really unlock Zion a lot. They're playing him at center, and they're playing him at point guard. And I know he's like a power forward, but putting him at those two positions has unlocked a million things. He's the 9th ranked player in head-to-head leagues. He's 9th in points leagues, averaging 51 fantasy points. Even Yahoo's archaic ranking system has him 12th in category leagues over the last 2 weeks in total numbers. He's averaging 26.5 points, 8.7 rebounds, and 4.7 assists. Hasn't hit a single three. Doesn't matter. Because he's doing Duke Zion stuff. 1.3 steals and 1.5 blocks. And he's doing old Zion stuff, which he didn't do all season, and that is being impossible to stop. 63% shooting. Because that was one of his massive strengths. He was at 61 the year before that, 61 the year before that from the field. You just couldn't stop him. He barreled through and couldn't be limited. This year he's at 58%. You go, what's going on with Zion? Where's the burst? He's not getting to the rim. He's not finishing anywhere, apart from certain Instagram models. But now it's back. And he's pairing that with defensive stats, and he's pairing it with being able to hit free throws. And I love it. And I am also skeptical, because do I want to buy that Zion's a 78% free throw shooter? I want to, but I'm not sure I'd want to bank my fantasy team on it. He's at 70% for the season. That's great. Don't really buy him as a 78. I'd love it. I want him to be, but I don't really buy it. 71, 72, sure, I can get behind that. Do I want to buy these a 1.5 blocks player? I do, again, but I don't. He's been putting up big block numbers, but he's averaging 0.6 for the year. Let's look at his last few games. 2, 3, 2, and then 0, 1, 1. So the block numbers are really spiked by that stretch where he had 7 blocks in 3 games. So that's probably not going to hold. The free throws have got more of a chance of holding than the 1.5 blocks, unfortunately. But it's been a great run. He has amazingly stayed relatively healthy. He's played 56 games. Which is, he played 29 in 22-23, played 0 the year before that. He did play 61 in a 72-game season in 2021. So, everything looks great. The minutes are up. There's just a couple of things that I'm a bit worried about, and where he goes in drafts next season is going to be absolutely curious. What about this guy? Grayson Allen. Is the man rolling? Yeah. 27th in -1 ranks over the last 2 weeks. Yahoo has him ranked 7th. He's averaging 31 fantasy points, which puts him 87th. It's a hot run. Now, I have said many times, I don't think he's a must-roster guy in points leagues. Obviously, being the 87th ranked guy with 31 fantasy points means he is. It is a real hot streak. But of course, when we look at the overall numbers, he's like 150th for the season in points leagues, which makes it, that's why I don't think that he was a must-roster guy, but he's been great the last 2 weeks. He's averaging almost 20 points per game on a team with Booker, Beal, and Durant. Now, Booker did miss some of that time, but this guy's just hitting everything. And that's where we get a little bit red flaggy. 3 rebounds and 3 assists. Okay, cool. He's hitting almost 5 triples with 1.1 steals. He's at 59% from the field and 55% from 3, including 92 from the line. So immediately you go, 55% from 3, come on. And then you want to compare it to his season numbers. And you go, oh, okay. He's at 48% from three this season. Now, he is a good three-point shooter. Obviously, he was at 40 last year, 41 the year before that. And I could sit here and tell you that 55 is going to come down, and it could come down to 37 or something like that. But maybe it doesn't. Like, he's at 48%. He does not miss. Well, he does 52% of the time, but otherwise he does not miss every time. So all of that gives me statistical red flags when I look at it and go, but what if? But what if he has a stretch here for the next 2 weeks where he does just shoot 34% and it tries to bring the numbers back to reasonable levels? But we're 60 games in and he's still hitting almost 50% from three. He's also playing a whopping 38 minutes a night, which is helping all the volume. This guy's averaging 20 points a game in 38 minutes a night on 15 usage. Something is going to give. He's also hitting, and I didn't mention this, 72% on his twos. It is going to crash. And it might not crash to the levels that 55% would usually crash to from three, but pair that with the big minutes, pair that with the 2-point shooting, and it is going to fall away. It has to fall away. It can't hold. For my sanity, it can't hold. Cam Thomas has been much better of late, 100%. He's more in control. He is not playing the ridiculous basketball he was early in the season, and he has been very clearly the Nets' best player over the last 3 weeks. I still don't buy it that it's going to hold at this level rest of season. I'll tell you why. 54th -1 Cam Thomas over the last 2 weeks, pretty good. 39 fantasy points, which is 44th, pretty good. Yahoo still doesn't like him, he's 110th. Yeah, whatever. Those numbers are false. He's averaging 27 points, 5.5 boards, 3.6 assists, all really, really strong. 2.8 dribbles, 0.8 steals, no blocks. He's shooting 49 from the field. Here we go. 44 from three and 85 from the line. And what Cam Thomas has been is not a good three-point shooter. He's at 44 from three the last 2 weeks. He's at 37 for the season. So he's like a mid three-point shooter. He's also hitting his twos at 51% when he's been under 50 all year. Is that better shot selection? I'm not sure because he's taking more shots. He's at 32 usage, which is above his season high number. So I think we're just also in the middle of a hot streak for Cam. Again, he's just playing much better. And I'm not expecting, because when Cam Thomas has a crash, he goes and shoots 38% on 30 attempts and is the 250th best player. I don't expect that. But I don't think he's going to roll at this level. I think the threes can come back. I think the twos can come back. He's also 75% better in his rebounding. He's at 3.1 per game. 5.4 over the last 2 weeks. And you say, well, he's playing more minutes, and that's true. But if you go and look at his rebound per 36, they're up from 3.7 to 5.7. So just now becoming just a better rebounder, which is great. Am I ready to buy into that as a long-term thing? Not yet. But it is good. And this is all about the slow improvements I've been talking about in seeing what he does. I'm not ready to fully buy into all of this. And I think there's going to be a reduction in stuff. But he's been much better. Go to Toronto. Go to the big fella, Gaz Trent, who at the moment is on a hot streak as well. 65th in -1 rankings, 68th in points league rankings, averaging 34 fantasy points with 23 points a game. The putrid rebounds and assists are still there. 3.8 boards, 1.4 assists. I believe he still has point guard eligibility on Yahoo, lol. He's at 4.2 threes a game with 1.4 steals, shooting 48 from the field, 40 from three, and 80 from the line. Where we look at this is the three-point shooting, he can be a 40% guy. There's no question about that. But now he's at almost 60% from two. He's a 45% two-point shooter this season. And even that's low. Then you go, well, what about previous years? Well, 49 the year before that, 45 the year before that, 44 the year before that. So 45 this season from two is actually basically just what he always does. He's just at the moment hitting everything. 60% from two is a huge number. The usage is also up. Now that can hold. He's at 25 usage versus 19 for the season because of the absence of Barnes and the absence of Barrett, who I don't think is coming back. He is at risk of random sits and injuries and whatever the Raptors decide to do here down the stretch. But irrespective of that, the 2-point number is going to fall. The usage may or may not hold, I'm not sure. But the 3-point volume, the 3-point shooting might also drop off as well. And I just don't think we're going to see Gaz maintain that level. Roster him, absolutely. Just be ready for a couple of things to probably fall away a little bit there for Trenner. And the last guy we go to is a player in a similar vein, and that's Anthony Simons, who, over the course of this season, I would say has been somewhat of a disappointment overall. But over the last 2 weeks, he's 23rd in -1 ranks, 25th on Yahoo. He's averaging 40 fantasy points, 26 points with 4 rebounds and 6.1 assists. Hitting 4.3 dribbles with 0.9 steals, no blocks, at 45 from the field, 42 from the line, and 42 from 3 and 92 from the line. This might seem stupid, but his 0.9 steals are actually way above what he's been doing. He's been at 0.5 steals, which is embarrassing. Is it that different to his career numbers? Not really. 0.7 last year, 0.5 the year before that. He's a terrible steals guy. And he's lucked into 1 or 2 extra steals over the last 2 weeks, and it's bumped him up. They're also playing him 38 minutes a night. And I, for one, just think there's no way they're going to play him 38 minutes a night down the stretch. That is going to taper. And that'll taper. The shooting might taper. The usage might taper. But the 38 minutes just aren't going to be something that holds. He's not going to maintain top 25 numbers. I just don't see how he does it. So the way he's getting to top 25 is by getting 6 assists a game. We'll see what happens as Scoot does a little bit more. We'll see what happens as they reduce his minutes. But it's also just on his true shooting of 61%. Where he's at 57 for the season. He's hitting every free throw. He's hitting 2s. He's hitting 3s. He's converting at a really efficient rate, and that has not been what's happened all year. So while I was pretty excited about Simons in the 60-70 range in drafts, he hasn't lived up to that number. Oh, actually, no, he has. It's been about that mark. But he hasn't elevated even further than that. But now we're just getting so many minutes. I don't think that we look at Simons as a 38-minute-a-night player rest of season. Pair that with some of those shooting numbers, which probably I don't think are going to be able to hold. And then you have a drop-off coming. So that is the end of the fantasy trends, the slumps. I looked at that graphic. I looked like I spelled something wrong. Did I write something wrong? No, I thought I wrote slurps and surges, which would be a completely different show. Anyway, go and follow this podcast where you find audio and double bang on the video side. Thumb it up, ring the bell. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.